Good afternoon, sir. Good night, sir, and fellow classmates. My name is Kaylin Permery, and my partner Alyssa Clark and I will be presenting on the topic teams and groups. So in this chapter, we'll be talking about characteristics of groups, the way groups develop, the dynamics among group members, the concept of teamwork and collaboration in group work, and the applications of the relational leadership model. Understanding groups. What is a group? A group is essentially a collection of individuals who maintain regular contact, engage in frequent interactions, mutually influence one another, foster a strong sense of companionship, and unite their efforts to accomplish common goals. Groups can take various forms, from highly structured ones with defined roles and processes, like a classroom or formal meeting, to informal gatherings like a chat at a dining table or a casual sports game. However, the type of group relevant to this leadership discussion isn't simply any gathering of individuals. To comprehend these groups better, we consider three dimensions. The first one being purposes. Groups have diverse purposes, ranging from support networks to task-oriented teams. The group's purpose guides its structure and processes, aligning them with the goal it aims to achieve. So let's take an example of a book club. The purpose of this group is to discuss and enjoy literature. Because of this purpose, the club has a structured format where members take turns choosing books, leading discussions, and following a reading schedule. The purpose of appreciating literature shapes the way the group operates, just as the purpose of any group should guide its structures and processes. Second, structure. This refers to how group members relate to each other. Some groups have clear hierarchies with formal leaders, while others are more flexible and are leaderless, where leadership emerges naturally from within the group. Leadership styles can vary from autocratic to collaborative, even in structured settings. So let's imagine you're part of a hypothetical project team at work. In this case, there's a clear hierarchy with a project manager who directs tasks. However, within the team, informal leaders might emerge based on their expertise or experience. This combination of formal leadership and informal leadership within the team showcases the importance of understanding group structures. And lastly, time. Groups can exist for different durations, such as one-time meetings or ongoing memberships. The length of time impacts group dynamics, with short-term groups needing quick alignment and ongoing groups requiring strategies to maintain motivation and focus. To consider your involvement in a fitness class at your local gym. It's a time-limited group that meets for an hour each session. To keep members engaged and motivated during this short time frame, the class has a structured routine and clear objectives for each session. This example highlights the duration of a group's existence, whether short-term or long-term, influences how the group operates and what challenges it faces. Group development. Many groups, whether formal or informal, go through stages. The first stage is forming. This marks a group's initial phase where they come together covering tasks like recruiting members and establishing connections. This stage involves addressing various questions like, what kind of information is essential? When will the group hold its meetings? How will it communicate? What response time protocols should be established for emails? What level of commitment is expected? What are the group's goals and mission, and what agreements are necessary to ensure the group functions smoothly? This formative phase, team building takes place, and trust begins to take root. Successful strategies in this stage include fostering open and trusting relationships that prioritize inclusivity. For instance, imagine a group of software engineers forming a new development team. At this stage, they introduce themselves, share their skills, and clarify the project's goals and their respective roles. Storming is the second stage. This is where the group begins to gain momentum, and this is where various differences, opinions, and conflicts may arise. If the group lacks clarity regarding its objectives and goals, or if its members cannot come to a consensus on shared goals, it might face challenges that can potentially lead to its breakdown. So using the same example as before, as the software development team starts working together, they encounter disagreements about the coding style and approach. Some prefer one programming language while others favor another. This stage involves resolving these conflicts and learning to adapt to different coding practices. The third stage is norming. This is where the group successfully resolves significant conflicts and differences. It begins to establish the routines and methods for how tasks are accomplished. This includes setting up formal or informal procedures, determining what matters are brought to the entire group's attention, specifying the required reports, defining roles and responsibilities, and establishing the norms for interactions. Members of the group simultaneously address both intimacy within the group and development of their collective identity. They start to grasp the unique culture and dynamics of the group, creating a sense of unity and mutual understanding. So in the same example, with time, the software engineers begin to appreciate each other's strengths and work more smoothly. They seek each other's input and have a better understanding of their roles. The team starts following coding standards and practices that everyone can agree upon. The fourth stage is performing. This is where the group reaches a stage of maturity and equilibrium. During this stage, the group is highly productive and efficiently accomplishes its task. It's a stage of harmony and synergy, where the group members have resolved conflicts, established clear procedures, and are fully engaged in their shared goals. The group's efforts are focused on achieving its objectives, making the most of the strong foundation built in the earlier stage of development. Using the same example, the software development team is operating at peak efficiency. They've overcome their conflicts, established efficient coding procedures, and are delivering high-quality code on time. Confidence in their abilities is high, and they can tackle coding challenges effectively. And the last stage is adjourning. This is where the group prepares to disband or transition to a new phase. It's a time for reflection, celebration, and achievements, and acknowledging the contributions of its members. For groups with a longer history, this stage can be emotionally charged, especially if the purpose has evolved or become obsolete. If a group does not adapt to change or bring in new members, it may approach this final stage, which might result in dissolution. In some cases, new groups with different objectives and members may need to be formed. To ensure ongoing effectiveness, groups that aim for long-term existence must remain adaptable and healthy. In this stage, the software project is now completed, and team members reflect on their achievements. They might have mixed feelings about ending the collaboration. In this stage, they review the project's success, document lessons learned, and prepare for future projects, or perhaps bid farewell as the team disbands. So now move on to the relational leadership and navigating group development stages. In any group's journey through development, be it forming, storming, norming, or performing, the principles of relational leadership can play a pivotal role. Here's how this philosophy guides us through each phase. So for forming, foster inclusivity and empowerment, ensuring active involvement of shareholders and stakeholders. Actively recruit diverse members to enrich the group with various talents. Serve as an example by demonstrating inclusive practices and shared leadership, and define shared goals and objectives for change. For storming, they should cultivate an environment where every individual's contribution is valued and nurture a sense of commitment to the group as a community of practice. Maintain ethical and transparent conduct. Exercise patience, ensuring that differing viewpoints receive a thorough hearing. Be mindful of potential biases or actions that might hinder someone's full participation. Address conflicts directly and openly, prompting participants to recognize their biases. And lastly, regularly review the group's objectives and goals for change. For norming, they should ensure equity in procedures, foster a culture of collaboration, extend a warm welcome to new members, keeping them informed and engaged, define individual responsibilities and the group's expectations, as well as what individuals can expect from the group. For performing, they should commemorate achievements and seek rejuvenation in interpersonal connections. Encourage members to acquire new skills and take on fresh roles for ongoing vitality. And lastly, re-examine objectives and reaffirm commitment. Dynamics in groups. Groups involve a range of processes, collectively referred to as group dynamics. This term includes the examination of a group's functioning and interactions, and the aspects like decision-making within the group, how it manages conflicts, and how it fulfills its leadership requirements. Group rules. A fundamental aspect of comprehending group dynamics is a recognition that in any interactive setting, individuals engage in a communication patterns that indicate the roles they are taking on within the group. So these roles fall into two main categories. First one being group building roles. These center on the people within the group and the relationships among its members. They focus on nurturing the group's processes and have also been referred to as group maintenance roles. Task roles, on the other hand, concentrate on accomplishing the group's objectives, such as providing information, sharing opinions, and guiding the group through tasks by summarizing and utilizing various decision-making strategies. Task roles are geared toward the content of the group discussion. Occasionally, some group members may exhibit dysfunctional roles that impede the group's progress. For instance, someone who persistently repeats their points even when the group is ready to move on is known as a special interest pleader and may have hidden motivations. A member who consistently resists or opposes group actions by being negative and disagreeable is referred to as a blocker, whereas participants who express negative opinions out of genuine concern for the group's direction are beneficial and should not be confused with blockers. Effective use of humor to ease tension or foster harmony is distinct from someone who behaves frivolously and does not take the group seriously. The person may be exhibiting a dysfunctional role. And lastly, a member who is quietly engaged in listening, thinking, and supporting the group's decision is an active member, commonly referred to as a follower, while someone who shows minimal participation, let's say reading a newspaper during meetings, is considered a non-participant. Each of us has a preferred set of practices that we feel most comfortable with in a group, which can be termed as our role set. Some might excel at seeking others' opinions, ensuring everyone has a chance to contribute, or summarizing discussions before decisions are made. Others might prefer sharing their opinions or providing information. For a group to function effectively, it needs participants who fulfill both task and group building roles. While not every individual can comfortably perform in all roles, it's valuable to be aware of the roles the group requires and request that someone with the appropriate skills take them on. So let's look at the examples of task roles in groups. Information seeker. So this is someone who recognizes that the group requires additional facts or data before making a decision. For instance, they may say something like, "We can't make a decision yet. We should gather more information. Let's have Sharon provide us with an update at our next meeting." Opinion seeker. This is the individual in the group who recognizes the need for additional insights, ideas, or opinions before making a decision. For example, they might ask, "Roger, considering your extensive experience with this topic, what's your perspective on this?" Opinion giver. This is a person in the group who shares their own views, feelings, or ideas to contribute to the group's collective thinking. For instance, they might say, "I firmly believe that in order to serve more students, we must increase the budget for the project." Summarizer. This person plays the role of condensing the opinions and discussions into a concise format to enhance clarity. They might express, "Before we proceed, let's make sure we all agree that while some of us are concerned about overspending, we are all aligned in our commitment to this project." And lastly, the clarifier. This person is responsible for elaborating on or explaining ideas using different words to enhance understanding. They help the group grasp the details, such as whether more involvement refers to quantity or quality. For example, they might ask, "Jim, when you mention more involvement, are you suggesting we need a higher quantity or better quality of engagement?" Now we'll look at examples of group building roles. So the first one, gatekeeper. This is a person in a group who actively encourages those who haven't had a chance to speak or who have been attempting to contribute. For instance, they might ask, "Tanya, you've been wanting to share your thoughts on this for a while now. We'd like to hear what you have to say." Encourager, someone who warmly welcomes all individuals and their diverse ideas. They create a supportive atmosphere where everyone feels valued. For example, they might express, What the sophomores just shared about this issue was truly enlightening. I appreciate that you took the initiative to bring this up. Thank you. Mediator, this individual seeks to harmonize conflicts and clarify opposing viewpoints in a constructive manner. They aim to find common ground. They might say, "It seems that both of you, despite initial appearances, share similar values and have numerous points of agreement on this issue." And lastly, the follower. This is an active listener who willingly supports the group's actions and decisions. They may not speak much, but they still actively engage in the discussion and feel comfortable with the group's choices. For example, they might express, "I haven't contributed much to the conversation, but this has been a fantastic discussion and I feel well informed. I support the decision we reach." To now move on to group norms. These are the unwritten rules and expectations within a group. Example, think of your first encounter with an established group. You observe to grasp what's considered normal. Are they sticking to the agenda, or do discussions wander? Are members warm and approachable, or distinct and formal? These unwritten practices define the group's behavior. In a card game, you follow the suit. In a baseball game, batting happens in a specific order. Likewise, groups using Robert's Rules of Order follow distinct procedures like making motions, seeking seconds, speaking sequentially, and voting. Other norms evolve organically. It could involve arranging chairs in a circle, starting meetings with introductions, or celebrating achievements on birthdays. These norms contribute to the group's unique character or personality. Some groups are open, adaptable, and supportive, while others are formal, reserved, and impersonal. So in order to create a distinctive group personality, consider which norms align with your desired outcomes. The relational leadership model strives to build highly engaged groups. Next slide. I'll now pass you on to Alyssa Clark.
Hi everyone, so we will now be looking at creative conflict. Conflict and disagreement in creative teams can arise from different factors, such as personality clashes, communication breakdowns, unclear rules and expectations, competing interests, or different perspectives. An example of a personality conflict would be if a dominant personality might continually interrupt a quieter person, blocking their participation in meetings or brainstorming sessions. Everyone is aware of the tension that a huge conflict creates, but no one talks about it. It is not uncommon for people to want to avoid conflict, so they often ignore it or pretend it doesn't exist. Some may say it's like having an elephant in the room. As we all know, with conflicts comes disadvantages, but there are also advantages as well. One advantage can be that it can lead to new ideas or methods. In hearing another person's perception, it helps to open our eyes to new perspectives on our ideas. Secondly, it can lead to innovation and creativity. So conflicts can inspire persons to think creatively and come up with new solutions to problems. Thirdly, it can increase motivation and productivity. Conflict can boost productivity because it motivates a person to come up with a solution to the issue at hand and work towards a common goal. With advantages comes disadvantages. So one disadvantage of conflict would be that it can distract from goal achievement. People may discover that their own goals are incompatible with those of their opponents. Secondly, it can cause defensiveness. Defensive behavior may make it hard to take responsibility for your actions, which may result in a loss of trust in others. Lastly, it can lead to potential escalation. If conflicts are not handled carefully, they may escalate and become more difficult to manage. Escalated conflicts can lead to damaged relationships and negative outcomes. With this, I would like to ask the class a question. How would you say that you deal with conflicts? You can unmute your mic or you could comment in the chat. How would you say you deal with conflicts? Anyone?
I'd say I'll deal with conflict in terms of finding out what the actual issue is that caused the conflict, and from that, kind of talk it out with everybody to resolve that said conflict.
Okay. And does that solve the conflict when you do that?
Majority of the times it gives us a kind of understanding of why the conflict was started and kind of in a little bit of a way how we resolve it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I'll just walk away because I know the type of person as I'm a very opinionated person, right? So that's the best. I think that's the best method for me personally to walk away. If I walk away, it probably might get a bigger conflict.
And would you say that that solves anything?
No, it doesn't solve anything. The problem, the conflict will still be there, and it still does be the elephant in the room, right? And everybody will just have to work with that elephant in the room.
Okay, and I'm very happy that you brought up the topic of walking away because my next question was actually going to be a poll to the class. So it was going to be, should a conflict be solved straight away or when we calm down? So who here thinks that a conflict should be sorted out straight away? It should be solved at the moment it is happening. Show of hands, anyone? Okay. Okay. Thank you. And who here thinks that a conflict should be solved when we walk away or when we calm down? Okay. Okay. Thank you. I also agree. I think I have to walk away from conflicts to have a better idea on how to solve it. With that, I have prepared two scenarios here, and I'm going to read the issue, and I'm also going to give what my perspective may be and what the other person's perspective may be. And I would like you guys to let us know what may be some possible solutions on how to solve these issues. So the first issue would be, my coworker and I do not have enough communication. I feel like we do not communicate enough and it's causing misunderstandings. My coworker may feel like they are communicating enough, but I'm not understanding their perspective. Does anyone have any ideas on how to solve this conflict? It's basically a conflict of communication. So what do you think would be some methods on how to solve it?
Have a sit down and a one-on-one conversation with them, telling them about the communication issue.
Yes, I agree with that. I do. Anyone else has any ideas? I think that, as going along with what Nicholas said as well, that maybe they could schedule weekly meetings to discuss ongoing projects and any issue that come up, or they could use a communication app to share important updates and check in regularly. So those communication apps would be like WhatsApp or email, etc. So in this second scenario, my team is struggling to meet a deadline, and I know we have all been there before. I feel stressed and frustrated that my team is behind schedule and may not be able to meet the deadline. My team may be struggling with a lack of resources or unclear instructions, which could be impacting their ability to meet the deadline. Does anyone have an idea on how to solve the conflict of not meeting a deadline? Or what have you done in the past to help the conflict of not meeting a deadline?
Teamwork.
Okay, I agree with that. Anyone else?
You need to find out what's the underlying cause of conflict.
Yes, that's very important. Very important. Anybody else has any ideas?
Find people to do.
You could repeat that, please. Seems a little soft.
Assign roles to.
Yeah, I agree with that. Assign rules. Okay. Along with what everyone said, I think that the best solution can be to reallocate resources, clarifying instructions and adjusting the deadline to ensure that the team has enough time to complete the project successfully. Thank you, everyone. So, conflict resolution. Conflicts are natural in both personal and professional relationships, and you shouldn't try to find a way to avoid conflicts. Instead, you should work on your conflict resolution skills. When conflict is confronted, it is usually best to employ negotiation and mediation strategies instead of power strategies. Different conflict resolution outcomes have been described as win-win, win-lose, and lose-lose. In win-win outcomes, both sides are heard and are satisfied with the resolution of their differences. So an example of this, if you look at it from an economical point of view, trade between nations is thought to be win-win. For example, if a nation is good at producing perhaps coffee, but terrible at growing rice, benefits from them exporting coffee to perhaps a country who is not good at producing coffee, but good at growing rice could benefit the country A. Secondly, in win-lose outcomes, one side uses power strategies to win by out-talking, putting down, or rushing to a premature vote, but in the process, a loser is created. An example of a win-lose negotiation is when a supplier quotes a high price for a product or service and the buyer negotiates for a lower price. So in this scenario, the supplier is looking to win by securing a higher price for their product or service, while the buyer is looking to win by securing a lower price. And lastly, in lose-lose outcomes, both sides use power strategies and get so entrenched, rigid, or hurtful that no effective resolution is reached, even in compromise. The classic example of a lose-lose strategy is the prisoner's dilemma. This is where two prisoners decide whether to confess to a crime. The optimal outcome for the first prisoner is to confess while the other prisoner, remains silent. So looking at the scenarios I gave previously, would you say that these two scenarios were win-win, win-lose, or lose-lose outcomes? Anyone could answer. Would you look at these scenarios and think they are win-win, win-lose, or lose-lose outcomes?
For the first one, I'd say it would come out as a win-win.
I agree. What about the second one? Anyone? I would also say that the second one would be a win-win because both parties are benefiting from the solution. So I agree with Nicholas that the first and as well as the second would be both considered win-win scenarios. Moving on to another example. Can anyone tell us what these pictures are representing here? Who is the man in these photos? Anyone? Well, these pictures represent the civil rights movement, and the man in these photos is Martin Luther King Jr. So, as we may know, the US civil rights movement grew out of 400 years of violent and non-violent conflict, rooted in the kidnapping and enslavement of Africans to work primarily in the plantation economy of the US South. So, how did this movement and Martin solve the conflict? The civil rights movement was successful in achieving its goals of breaking the pattern of many public facilities being segregated. One of the major events that helped to achieve this was the Montgomery bus boycott and the desegregation of interstate travel. The relational leadership model. The relational leadership model emphasizes the relationships among people when leading an organization. Relational leadership values inclusion, empowerment, purposefulness, ethical behaviors, and process orientation. Inclusive leaders considers everyone's viewpoints and experiences when making decisions. Conflicts are useful when they raise perspectives and need attention before the group moves to resolution. The more similar a group is, the more essential it is to think through an issue from multiple perspectives. We will now be looking at group decision making. So I want to provide the class with a scenario, right? And I would like you guys to come up with the best decision for this scenario. So the scenario is our airplane has just crashed onto an uninhabited island and will explode. In the airplane, there are 9 objects. Only 3 objects can be taken out before it explodes. Which 3 objects should be taken out of the airplane? So I'm going to list all 9 objects right now. So the first would be a box of matches, a crate of beer, a crate with 12 bottles of water, 5 warm sweaters, a first aid kit, anti-insect spray, a gun with 20 bullets, a compass, and a flashlight. So anyone can answer this. What do you think the 3 objects should be that should be taken out of the plane?
Flashlight, the gun with 20 bullets, and the
Mhm.
box of matches.
Okay. What about somebody else? What would be the 3 objects you would take out?
I say the first aid kit, the gun, and the crate with 12 bottles of water.
Okay. Anybody else? Now, you see, the thing with this scenario is that only 3 objects can be taken out, right? So all of us has to come up with 3 objects. So you see how everyone has a slightly different answer. We need to come to one decision. I know someone said a box of matches, the gun. Why the box of matches? Is it to light fire, cook food?
Yeah, to build a fire. You don't know if the well is on an island, so the place probably might be cool. You only said 5 warm sweaters. How much people on the plane? Were they taking turns with them sweaters? Right? The gun is to protect yourself or to kill animals to eat. You can use the same fire to cook the animals you're killing to eat. Right?
Good point.
I didn't choose the bottled water because it probably might get water on the island someplace.
So your 3, what is your 3 at the end of the day? The box of matches, the gun, and the water?
No, not the water. The
The warm
flashlight.
sweater, the flashlight. And Nicholas, yours was the first aid kit.
The gun and the crate with 12 bottles of water.
Okay. So
Yep, you want to know the reasoning? Or no?
not
I would
necessarily.
agree with Nicholas. I would agree with Nicholas because all those 3 ones are more necessary for survival than a box of matches and flashlight.
So
Basically, my reasoning is like, if you actually have a good first aid kit, it will include the flashlight, a box of matches, and possibly something extra to weigh on, or like the anti-insect spray. All those stuff would be included in a well-packed first aid kit.
that is true. I do agree with that.
Question, you have a doctor on board? You have a doctor on board of that plane?
Just think it's just
You have
it's
somebody
just us.
that burst with medicine anyway, no? What do
No,
you have
it's
to know
just-
about medicine on the island? You have certain plants you could use.
So would you agree with Nicholas that the first aid kit may have a flashlight already?
Yes.
So you think that we could probably just go with the first aid kit instead of the flashlight?
Wait, no. We don't need the first aid kit. Yeah, other ways of taking care of somebody without thing. We in the 21st century. Yeah, ways around that.
Okay.
Right? We need the flashlight.
Okay, well, thank you
So
everyone.
what size is the flashlight in the box in the first aid kit?
It will have to be a tiny one.
Well,
Or in
no,
a
the
plane,
one
you may
that
have a big one as well because it's a plane.
is a tiny one.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for your participation. So we'll be moving on now. So, on many occasions, the positional leader has to make a decision on behalf of the group. Whenever a positional leader is faced with making an individual decision, the relational leadership model will be useful in guiding the decision process. The leader should ask themselves, does this decision support our vision and mission? What opinions do my group members have about this issue? Will this decision heighten our involvement or limit involvement? Is this the right thing to do? Is it principled? Should I slow down making this decision so that others can get involved? Participative leadership. The values in participative leadership acknowledge that a better decision is made and receives greater acceptance when those involved are part of that decision process. One of the clearest benefits of the theory is the increased number of opinions involved in decision making. Whether the leader uses a more autocratic style or a more consensus style, different opinions and ideas are listened to and allowed to fester. Positional leaders who make important decisions in an autocratic manner find that they alienate workers and group members, even when they, as leaders, have the authority to make those decisions. A challenge facing this type of leadership is a desire for control and conflicting viewpoints. The leader or one of the followers may desire to control the decision-making process and may insist on his or her own ideals. So one example of a participative leader would be the founder of Microsoft, Bill Gates. He is a true participative leadership example. He is known to take suggestions from colleagues and teams. He understands how imperative it is to value the knowledge and skills of team members. Now we'll be looking at the consensus building process. Does anyone know what is consensus? What would you say is consensus? Anyone has any idea?
It's like it's like information on like a population and their thoughts and so on.
Yes, I agree. In a way, that's consensus. I would say as well, consensus is a general agreement. So as simple as that. So knowing what consensus is, does consensus mean that every single decision is made by the entire group? Yes or no? Would anyone like to answer? Do you think that consensus means that every single decision is made by the entire group all the time?
By the
Yes or no?
majority.
Majority. Okay. I agree with that. So ultimately, I think that would be known. Consensus does not mean that every single decision is made by the entire group all the time. Sometimes, maybe, but not every single time. Achieving consensus is not always easy and can be a time-intensive process. Not all decisions warrant the attention of the entire group. It would be absurd to waste group members' time or resources by meeting on every single thing. The following are guidelines for reaching consensus within a team. So firstly, clearly define the issue facing the team. Secondly, focus on similarities between positions. Thirdly, ensure that there's adequate time for discussion. And lastly, avoid conflict-reducing tendencies, for example, voting. Consensus requires that the group become comfortable with handling conflict and be informed by the rising controversies that can lead to a good decision. Consensus also requires that the group be willing to use strategies like active listening, compromising, and working in a collaborative manner. When teams fail to reach consensus, it is often because they do not allow enough time for members to discuss perspectives and opinions, to discover common grounds, or because conflict is mismanaged or reaches a level that erodes trust among individuals. Mutual respect and trust among group members is a critical component to successfully achieving decision by consensus. So with knowing what consensus is now, with the earlier scenario I gave with the plane, do you guys think that we came to a consensus or not? Yes or no? Would you say that we came to a consensus at the end of the day and stuck with 3 objects that everyone could have agreed with? Anyone think so?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would maybe disagree with that because, the instruction said only choose 3 objects, and I know Nicholas and Kaylin chose 3 that were similar, but I know Melinda had her ideas and she's, thought of a different object. So I wouldn't say we came to complete consensus, but we were on the route of coming to complete consensus at the end of the day. Now we'll be looking at teamwork. Many look to the sports metaphor of a team to illustrate how individuals need to work together toward a common purpose. Hospitals have a team for each patient. Whatever the metaphor, participants in the same group share the goal of working toward being an effective team. So we'll look at teams and groups. Just as collections of people do not automatically constitute groups, all groups are not teams. And I'll say that again, all groups are not teams. Teams are, however, one kind of group. Teams are more than just a group of people working together. A powerful group has two characteristics. It is made up of the right people and it demonstrates teamwork. Teams are, however, one kind of group. Teams are more than just a group of people working together. Although both have the characteristics of mutual interaction and reciprocal influence, teams have a stronger sense of identity and common goals or tasks. Types of teams range from those that function like working groups to true teams that couldn't accomplish their goals individually. We'll look at some characteristics and some of the differences between the characteristics of working groups versus teams. Firstly, a strong, clearly focused leader is appointed in working groups, while in teams, shared leadership responsibilities exist among members. Secondly, in working groups, the general organizational mission is the group's purpose, while in teams, a specific, well-defined purpose that is unique to the team. Thirdly, in working groups, individual accomplishments are recognized and rewarded, while in teams, there is team celebration. Lastly, in working groups, meetings are efficiently run and last for short periods of time, while in teams, meetings have open-ended discussion and include active problem solving. Three common types of teams are functional, self-directed, and cross-functional. Functional teams tend to resemble hierarchical organizations in which power and authority are contained at the top. The self-directed team is typically a group whose members possess all the technical knowledge and skills to accomplish a task or goal. Lastly, in cross-functional teams, they usually are composed of individuals from a variety of skill sets, departments, or areas. An example of this would be a company like Apple. They might form a cross-functional team that consists of a software engineer, marketing and sales specialist, a project manager, and an applications designer to invent a new product. Teams must have clear goals to achieve success. Often teams either do not take the time to formulate goals or set goals that are unclear and unattainable. So the SMART rubric provides a framework for teams to use as they establish their goals. Firstly, specific. The goal must be clear to everyone. Secondly, measurable. It is quantifiable. Thirdly, attainable. The goal must be realistic and possible to achieve. It must also be relevant. The goal is in alignment with the direction of the organization and its overall strategy. Lastly, it must be time-bound. There's a set time frame by which the goal will be achieved, for example, within a semester or within a year. An example of a SMART goal is perhaps responding to all emails that the team receives about its upcoming event on April 2nd within 24 hours. Factors that are critical for a team's success are: 1, disregard organizational boundaries in an effort to arrive at the best solution. 2, be sensitive and responsive to the concerns and considerations of other team members in the design of projects. And 3, develop a sense of trust among all team members. Moving on to team learning. Individual learning is a conventional norm for a college student. Only you can read a book, only you could write that computer program, and only you can take the test. However, learning occurs in many other ways, through group projects and in experiential settings and in study groups. Approaches to team learning include accumulating the learning preference of the majority of members, for example, in a scientific research group in which everyone prefers facts and details, or even in a friendship group in which most are flexible and casual. Team learning happens in dialogue with each other and through reflection on shared experiences. Dialogue is far more than the mere words used to share meaning. It can include the tone of voice, it could include laughter, pauses, difficulty in finding the right words, and the amount of discussion needed to come to some meaning. For true understanding to result, it is important that both teams and groups establish ground rules or norms to handle their inevitable controversies with civility. Some groups mistakenly engage in discussion in which members share their own views with minimal attempts at true understanding. This can lead to debates. Groups that value learning together will establish true dialogue methods. Dialogue is built into the processes of reflection, which involves thinking together. Your obligation as a listener is to understand and connect. Dialogue encourages you to clarify your points, not to prove them. I'll now pass you on to my colleague, Caitlin.
Leadership implications and team leadership. Team performance and team development are two critical functions of leadership. The relational leadership model underscores the importance of both of these functions. Team performance means accomplishing the group's goals, making decisions and plans, achieving results, and solving problems. Team development includes establishing effective relationships, creating an environment in which individuals feel valued, and facilitating cohesion within the team. Sometimes leaders are those who sit back, listen, and help the group move forward without having to be in charge. While balancing the ongoing activities of the team or group, leaders also face both internal and external demands. Leaders shift between the behaviors of monitoring, taking action, and paying attention to internal and external group issues. Team members can also take on these functions, which is typically the case with more experienced and mature groups. In these cases, leaders would do well to step aside and let the team take on these responsibilities and tasks. Next slide. Characteristics of team leadership. Clear, elevating goal. The group believes that the goal is worthwhile and it is clear enough to tell when the objectives have been met. Results-driven structure. The group's purpose needs to drive the structure of the team. Competent team members. The group members must possess appropriate technical knowledge and interpersonal skills to work collaboratively as a team. And principal leadership. The leader establishes priorities and helps team members stay focused on the goals, sustains collaborative environments for the team, and manages performance. Next slide. Leaders are often called upon to take action. When the group is stuck and unable to move forward, it may require the leader to mediate conflict, assist the group in focusing on its goals, or coach the group on interpersonal skills. 4 design components needed to establish teams. The first one being task structure. The team understands its task and finds meaning in it. The team is given autonomy to accomplish the task. 2. Group boundaries. The size of the team is just right. Diversity exists within the team, and the team has sufficient knowledge, information, and interpersonal skills to accomplish the goals harmoniously. 3. Norms. The team has a set of norms to guide the behaviors of the team members. And lastly, authority. There is a flexible rather than a rigid use of authority by the leader and team members that allows for open debate and instills a sense of empowerment and trust. These 4 conditions are important at the beginning stages of team development to allow for teams to work effectively and efficiently. Summary. Groups serve as the fundamental elements of communities of practice. We engage in diverse groups at varying stages of evolution. This chapter explored models from group development and the fundamental principles of group dynamics, including topics such as decision-making, conflict resolution, and team building that shape group behaviors. It's essential to recognize the distinctions between groups and teams, as well as the intentional process of evolving working groups into effective teams. So I'll end off by the quote by Phil Jackson: "The strength of the team is each individual member. The strength of each member is a team." This brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you everyone for listening. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask.
All right, so I don't think anybody will have any questions, so I'm going to post the recording now.